It's the Locked On Flyers podcast for Monday, May 19th, your daily dose of Flyers news, analysis, and high quality content that's wondering what Rick Tocchet is going to do next.
I bet you he's wondering too.
You're Locked On Flyers, your daily podcast on the Philadelphia Flyers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey there, and thanks for making Locked On Flyers your first listen every day. I am Rachel Donner. I've been podcasting about the Flyers, the NHL, and hockey for a decade, and I'm here with prospect expert and Flyers credentialed reporter for 19 years, Russ Cohen. This episode is brought to you by Monarch Money. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use code LOCKEDONNHL at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. And to keep up with our latest episodes and Flyers news, you can find us at Locked On Flyers on Instagram, Threads, Blue Sky, and Twitter. And of course, here on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. We are going to get into those next steps for Rick Tocchet. We have our Nemesis of the week and our new poll question for this week as well to get to. But first, we're going to get caught up with our guys at Men's Worlds who are having a pretty good time of it so far, it seems, especially Travis Konecny, who racked up another couple assists versus Slovakia on Saturday. He now has 3 goals and 6 assists in 5 games in the tournament. Like, not too shabby there, Travis.
No, it's good. It's a good showing.
Yeah, and Tyson Foerster got his first goal of the tournament in that game as well, and it was a really nice shot on the rush. It was, I would say, a very typical kind of Tyson Foerster goal, where his shot, like the way he can time his release is just so impressive sometimes.
Yeah, no question. I mean, if the Flyers could see more of that, that would be great.
Yeah, I think so too. Travis Sanheim is just sitting with an assist right now, but he's doing a lot of work defensively for Team Canada. Tyson Foerster has a goal and an assist in 4 games played. The other guys have played 5 games.
Good experience
each.
for him. He's not expected to be a top guy.
Right. Yeah, just to get a look with Team Canada and get some time and to learn from everybody who.
Right, that's a big thing for him. And it's a good end of the season confidence builder for Konecny, whose season started off great and didn't end so great. So that's good for him too.
Yeah, I love that. So Team Canada is playing Finland today and then Sweden tomorrow, which wraps up the prelims, and then they'll go into the medal rounds where we'll continue to talk about that as the tournament progresses. But Sam Ersson has been splitting the time with Markstrom in net for Team Sweden. So Markstrom got the games against Slovakia, Slovenia, and Finland. Obviously, the more difficult of the opponents here. But Ersson is playing well nonetheless. So he had 14 saves on 16 shots versus Austria, which we talked about already. But in his next 2 games against Latvia and France, 2 shutouts, one that was a 20-shot shutout and the other one was 15. And so, pretty good. I'm hoping this is building some of his confidence along the way.
Yeah, that's what you hope for. These aren't great opponents. We know that. But as far as him, he's still doing the same job. So yeah, if it does sort of reinforce that for him, that's what you want.
Yeah, absolutely. So good for him. And the fact that he and Markstrom have split the ice time pretty much equally, I think
that
really
bodes well for the Olympics. Still, he's probably the 3rd on the Olympics though.
Sure. But
there always is going to be somebody from, I don't know, who's hot with the SHL or another NHL one that's going to be in there. And honestly, nobody else is really going to play besides Markstrom except for the occasional game. So like maybe he gets a game, maybe he doesn't. That's all. Right. It's nothing of his doing. Markstrom would probably have to get hurt.
Yeah, absolutely. But still a lot of fun to see him in this tournament. Yes. And then a player that we didn't talk about much because he was a later addition, but Rodrigo Abols is on Team Latvia, which is really cool to see. And man, he had a hell of a snipe for a goal against Finland. And Latvia is obviously struggling in this tournament
Oh yeah.
up against some of the juggernaut teams. So for Abols to get one on the board, I think is just huge for Latvia in general, let alone him. But it was one of his patented kind of shots that we see from him
Yeah.
all the time with the Phantoms.
Yeah, that's big for his country. I mean, we look at it and say, "Hey, nice goal," but like over there, that's massive. Like anything they score, they just
Right.
start cheering and going crazy because they know what they're up against. So, but it's good. It's good for him because he's at least got a higher profile now than he did 2 years ago.
Yeah. Yeah, which is really, really good. Switching gears and talking about some of the Flyers prospects who we've been following as they've gone through their postseason tournaments in junior hockey here. London won the OHL championship as we kind of expected
No surprise there.
to do, but something we talked about last week was Denver Barkey's injury, and good news that he returned for the final game
Okay.
in that series, which was nice to see. No points on the board, but ice time is ice time, and him being healthy enough to play again was, I think, the most important thing.
Yeah, and having him in the Mem Cup is good for him and the team and everybody.
Yeah. So Oliver Bonk finished out the OHL playoffs with 2 goals and 12 assists in 17 games. And as a defenseman, a plus 28 with 44 shots on goal. Like, that's a real good run for him.
No, that's a great run. That's impressive.
Love to see that. Noah Powell, as we know, was on the losing side of that in Oshawa. As we know, he was that 5th round draft pick last year that we talked about when we were previewing this finals for the OHL. And he wound up with 4 goals and 10 assists for 14 points in 21 playoff games. No additional points in this series, but it was a really tough series. And for him to get through was going to be difficult no matter what.
Yeah, but it's a good showing for him.
Right. And the Q is still in the finals mid-series. So we'll see what happens there. But the Memorial Cup begins on
you didn't
May
mention
22nd.
Flyers prospect Caleb Denoyer. Okay, I see what you're doing there.
Yes, he is also in that Q final there, but don't want to jinx it there, Russ. This is how we're doing it. We're just playing it casual until we get to the draft.
Okay.
For sure. Because obviously we would love to have Caleb Denoyer. I know I'm a Frondell girl, but Caleb Denoyer is no slouch either at center, but was just trying to play it cool there, but you blew up my spot. At any rate, the Memorial Cup starts on May 22nd, so we will see London at the very least play in it, and maybe we'll see the return of Spencer Gill, but not likely, as they are the host team for that tournament. A lot more to follow with our Flyers guys in Worlds and our prospects as they are wrapping up the season. But Rick Tocchet is just getting started as the Flyers head coach, and he's got a lot of work to do. And we're going to lay out some of the stuff that he should be thinking about right now coming up next.
Ever check your bank account and wonder where'd all the money go? Between dining out, online shopping, and entertainment, it's easy to lose track. That's where Monarch Money comes in. Your personal CFO, giving you full visibility and control over your finances. Monarch Money isn't just a budgeting app, it's a complete financial command center. You can track all your accounts, investments, and spending in one place so you stop just managing your money and start building wealth. When I started using Monarch, I just realized how much I was spending on food delivery. Now I budget smarter and save more. And instead of juggling multiple apps, you could use Monarch to check your finances, track spending, and even plan long-term goals. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use code LOCKEDONNHL at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. That's monarchmoney.com, code LOCKEDONNHL for half off your first year.
On tomorrow's show, we're going to ask some of the same questions about the Lehigh Valley Phantoms now that we've had sort of a week to sit on how the season ended up for them. We're going to talk about their next steps and some of the players involved and dig more into that. So looking forward to that. Plus, on Wednesday, we will answer your mailbag questions as we usually do on Wednesdays. So let us know what you got via email at lockedonflyers@gmail. You can send us a message on any of our socials or comment on our YouTube channel. So, Russ, I think, obviously when you come on board as a new head coach here, one of the first things you're going to do is start communicating with the players and ask them how their seasons went, what they think they need to work on this off season. But what do you think he should be telling the players at this point?
Well, before the players, he communicated with somebody else, which is something John Tortorella would never do, and we said he would never do. And he took a picture with Gritty.
I was gonna say that. Oh my God. It was like the heavens had parted and we were
because you knew that wasn't going to happen in the previous regime.
Oh
but
man,
it happened.
I know. When I saw those pictures, I was like, oh, things are different now. Things are different.
No, but I think the communication basically is let them know what kind of coach you are. Let them know expectations of players in general. You don't have to it's not the time of the year to start getting into the nitty gritty of things where this is what you should do, you didn't do it, all that. You got time for that. Let them train over the summer. Like, players know what they did wrong, they know what they can be better at,
Right.
but sometimes they don't know the way out of it. Like Owen Tippett, like he knows what's up, but he hasn't figured a way out of it. So I think there's those kinds of things, and you do that. And you can't do much more because honestly, without a defensive assistant, you don't know what the strategy is going to be. So it's hard to talk about defense with the defenseman unless you know exactly how you're going to run it. He doesn't know exactly yet. He's probably going to talk to people and then let them tell him how they should run it and pick one of them.
Right. And that's why I kind of phrased it like asking them how they thought their season went.
Yeah.
Right. And just kind of get the input and have it be more of a listening experience than a talking experience.
He talks a lot though.
He does, but that's true. As we saw at the press conference on Friday, but I think that, it's just really important for him to just get input and initial thoughts from the players themselves so that he can start formulating, how he wants to approach this team as a coach. And he talks about his communication style at length. And so this will help guide him in terms of building how he can communicate with this particular group of players most effectively. And hopefully that's the kind of thing he's doing is just trying to gather information on these players in order to figure out how to coach them. And then maybe also have that guide what kind of assistant coaches he's trying to find that can help communicate with them just as effectively. And so that's kind of the next step, right? Is to start thinking about the team that you want to put together to coach the Flyers. And I think that, you do need to find a group that is going to work with this group of players effectively, but also think toward the future and do that teaching model that he has been talking about, right?
Yeah. I think one of the things you could do, aside from all those things, you could get everybody's shirt size. And when you decide what your motto is going to be, you send everybody a shirt in like a month. And, whether it's going to be there's no rope in training camp or times ahead or no, but you could send it to them for the guys to kind of wear when they're training. Like, you can get that in their heads if you want. And so I actually think that's an effective tool, even though I'm having fun with it too. But I do think that's something, that can be done. Maybe start a text chain. I'm not sure what the rules are. Like, players might not be allowed to be contacted that much over the summer after they kind of have the exit interview. But if you're allowed to, start a text chain. And, I think these are things that players probably didn't do or didn't do much with Torts that I think could change and at least help, like the communication, the feeling about it. Maybe it won't be as, I don't know. I don't want to use the word tight, but you could tell the guys were tight at times. It won't be like that.
Right. Now, obviously, when we're thinking about names for the assistant coaches, the big name that's been out there is Luke Richardson. And I know there's a lot of people who are bristling at that because
they probably already logged out of the show. They're like, another Flyer, I'm out.
I know, right? So yet another ex-Flyer. He played for the team from 97 to 02. but he has had I would say, not insignificant coaching career
Mhm.
since his playing days. And I think the two things he's known most for is his time with the Ottawa Senators organization, where he was the AHL head coach for them
Yeah.
for a little while before jumping to assistant roles with the team, as well as with the New York Islanders. He famously took over temporarily for Claude Julien in the
Mhm.
bubble for Montreal when Claude Julien got COVID, and
Yep.
then helped guide the team to the Cup finals in that very strange year.
Oh,
And
yeah.
then, of course, became head coach of the Chicago Blackhawks and was fired in his third season as head coach of the Blackhawks. And I think there's a couple questions that I have related to his tenure with the Blackhawks in particular. I think what he did before that showed a really strong trajectory
Mhm.
of coaching for him. But I think the first question I have is that is there concern that he couldn't do better than he did on a team with Connor Bedard? And so the question is around, can he guide young talent, right?
Yeah, no, I think he can. I think nobody was going to be able to have that job and keep that job. They didn't have enough players around Bedard.
Right.
They just, especially then. Now they're getting a little better, but then no. So I mean, I don't think it was looked at that way. I think everybody kind of looked at it like, hey, it's a good um, stepping stone job for whoever is getting it, because they weren't going to be there for the next 6-7 years when it all started to turn around. That I never looked at it that way.
Yeah, I think it's just like one of those questions that you have to ask,
Yeah.
because that team went out last year 8-16-2, and that is very
I
bad.
mean, Dave Haxtell, after he got fired, he was the Leafs assistant for a while, right? So
Yeah.
same kind of thing.
Yeah. And that's the other question, right? Is some guys, like, once you become a head coach, do you go back to being an assistant? And some guys will, and some guys won't.
You
I
do if
think
you want to get back in.
Right. And I think Luke Richardson is the guy that would, for two reasons. Number one, he wants to get back in, to your point. And number two, he has the connection to the organization
Right.
and is willing to do it for the Flyers
Yeah.
because, he's part of the community here.
Yeah. And I think those are all good reasons. He's a good defensive guy. And I think there may be some
Yes.
truth to the rumor out there. And maybe that's why Brad stepped aside, because you're not going to have two defensive guys.
Right.
So that's probably part of it.
Yeah, I would say so. And I think, given his background as a really strong defenseman, I don't hate it at all. I
No.
think it would be he would be a really good choice. If Bradshaw is gone, it's a really good choice,
Yeah, I
think,
think it
to
would
be
be
an
solid.
assistant.
I think you don't want to say you wouldn't miss Bradshaw, because I think you would on some
Right.
level, but
Correct.
he would be a terrific guy. So, and then power play, I have no clue. I have not even heard, looked. I have nothing on that.
Right. I think that's kind of the biggest other need, is finding somebody that can solve the power play. And Tocchet talked about it at the presser when asked. He didn't, volunteer it, but he certainly addressed it when asked, and knows that that's something that is a dire need on this team. And hopefully he'll go out and find the right person, whether it's somebody he knows already that's good at it, or, somebody else that pops up. But I do think, like, having somebody who's a really strong power play specialist that isn't necessarily your regular 5-on-5 forward guy, right,
Right.
would be
Yeah,
a good thing.
I agree. And I say this in the best possible way, they can't use anybody that's in house for this. They had
Right.
too many people trying to help the other power play, and nobody in house was able to solve it. So there's nobody in house that could solve this either. And this is where he does need to kind of reach out. It doesn't mean the guy can't be an ex-Flyer. It just means it can't be anybody already in the organization, because it didn't work and the power play wasn't working well in Lehigh. So there is nobody to use internally.
Yeah, I think, like, if they went out and hired Eric Lindros, it would be a little weird.
Right.
Right?
Yeah. I mean, because John
So
LeClaire tried to help and it didn't help.
correct. Yeah, he was part of that group
Whatever.
of guys
Yeah.
or committee or whatever that they had trying to solve it, that that didn't work. So I think definitely an outside influence is the right way to go when we're talking about trying to fix the power play here. I think the other secondary need is, again, because Bradshaw will no longer be with the team, they're going to really have to find somebody. And I don't know if Luke Richardson is that guy entirely, that maybe there's some other, secondary coach or advisor that has to be brought in to repair the penalty kill a little bit, because
Yeah, that's
it did
possible.
trail off a little bit this season, but it's going to be a huge hole to fill in terms of who's coaching the penalty kill.
Yeah, I mean, the penalty kill is kind of like this. The person really has to have a defensive mind, but it's also like a feeling too, because a lot of times the really good players that are good at it are ones that have a feel for kind of like where I could intercept the pass and go the other way, where the puck is going, like that kind of thing. But as a coach, you're at first deploying this simple strategy of, hey, this is how we're going to play. We're going to play the box. We're going to play this. You're going to decide the diamond. You're going to decide how to play it. But then the players you have on it, then it's kind of up to them to be aggressive, not aggressive, based on what the coaching staff wants.
Right, but also this coach is gonna have to find the right players to execute it, right? And
Yeah,
do
like
all
there's
of that
probably
work to
somebody they
try
could
different
get.
people out, right?
Right. There's probably somebody that if they decide that, hey, that's a thing they're going to look at. Because even though the Flyers power play wasn't good, we all realized they have players that should be good on the power play. Getting penalty kill specialists, that's something different. They don't grow on trees. You do have to kind of look for them sometimes.
Right, and I think when you're looking at a forwards coach in particular, I feel like this is where you wait it out until the playoffs are over and really look at the gamut of what's out there. Because to me, like, we've talked about Todd Nelson, who's the Hershey Bears coach, a couple of times. Like,
Yeah.
I think a guy like him is somebody you really need to consider here. I mean, I know with him particularly, maybe that's not something you do to Lappy, even if Lappy isn't your guy. Like, I don't know that you would like ethically do that, just from that perspective. But
I don't
part of
know.
me
I
is like,
mean,
so what? You just got
you
to get the
can't
best
worry
guy for the
about it.
job.
You can't worry about it if it's going to happen. You have a discussion with them. But I mean, Lappy was up with the staff too for a while. I mean, it's like it happens. You go up, you go down. Guy, Lappy so far has, probably going to keep his job. So I think he should be comfortable enough that if that were to happen, he just said wishes him well. Like, his next step is he said he wants to be an NHL coach. Okay, then you shouldn't worry about who is the assistant. That's the way I feel.
Yeah, I think so too. But again, we're going to talk more about Lappy and the lack of information around Lehigh Valley and their next steps on tomorrow's show. But I do think that's something in the back of everybody's mind right now, given where the Phantoms are and what is the future for Ian
Right.
LaPerriere and the Flyers
Yeah,
organization,
we don't know.
right? We don't know at all. But again, to be continued on tomorrow's show. In the meantime, it is Monday, so we will have our new poll question for this week. And after last week, I'm excited to hear what y'all have to think about this one, about Rick Tocchet and his priorities. We're going to introduce that and have our Nemesis coming up next. Russ, I don't know about you, but I'm still kind of recovering for that Stars versus Jets game on Saturday night. Man, Mark
Yeah.
Scheifele,
Oh yeah.
like my heart just goes out to him. Like,
Yeah.
what
Tough
a
one.
24 hours. Just everything.
And he was heroic.
Everything.
He was, yeah.
Yeah, he did the best he could, but to be sitting in the penalty box in that overtime, oh,
It's the way it goes sometimes,
I
right?
can't even imagine. I just can't imagine. But
No.
yeah, just really thinking about him at this
Yeah,
time
we send
for
our
sure.
condolences and yeah.
So our poll this week, last week was, more about the draft. This week, what is your top priority for Rick Tocchet and the new coaching staff? So option 1 is get a power play specialist and improve that. Option 2, returning to a more disciplined defense. Option 3, unlocking untapped potential in struggling scorers. or option 4, getting a handle on player development and coordination with Lehigh Valley. So which is your top priority amongst those things? And if you have a different priority, let us know in the comments. The link to that poll will be in the show notes, and it'll be over on our YouTube channel, so you can find it there as well. Moving over to our nemesis of the week. Last week, I talked about the coaching search stress, and luckily that stress is over because we have a coach now. We can stress about the coach and what they're doing, but that's a whole other kind of stress that we will move into. And Russ, you talked about the leagues that have exclusive game rights on a million different streaming services. You use baseball as an example, but the fact that we need too many subscriptions, and that's the case in hockey too. We talked about that, and I will never stop getting mad about all of that and the bifurcation of license holders
I
and
listened
rights
to
holders.
Sirius today on a show, and somebody who was on a show basically said they listened on Sirius because they didn't have an ESPN Plus subscription to one of the games the other night. Like, that's where it's at, and not everybody can afford every subscription out there.
Yeah. Yeah. Now, I think my nemesis this week is I feel like, there will be news around the assistant coach hirings, hopefully over the next couple of weeks or to a month, possibly. And hopefully we'll get some information about the Phantoms. But I feel like between right now and the draft is kind of a black hole of information in a lot of ways around the Flyers. And that is a whole other kind of stress that I can get about the team, is sort of being in this in-between stage for the Flyers in this offseason. Because again, we're still kind of decompressing from the season that was. We're getting excited or nervous about Rick Tocchet, depending on your position on his hire. And then, we're not quite ramped up yet for the draft to get excited about some new blood being infused in the Flyers prospect pool. So yeah, this period is just a little bit weird for the Flyers right now for me.
It is. So sit back for this one. This is again going to be baseball, but so the other day, Rob Manfred announced that Pete Rose, Shoeless Joe Jackson, all these guys are now reinstated and can be voted on for the Baseball Hall of Fame. So regardless of where I fall on the situation, whether I think they should be or shouldn't be, my first issue with that was, why now? You waited until Pete Rose died. Like you did. You waited until Pete Rose died, and now it's going to be 2 years from now. It's going to be 2027. Joe Jackson died in 1950 something. So It's like, if something's all of a sudden not a rule, why did you wait until, that guy died? Like, that part really just was
so
bad.
Weird.
It just doesn't make sense, right? And then the other part is,
to what end? What was the point?
Right. And now they've taken it out of the writers' hands. It's going to be the executive committee that votes it. And some of those players played with Pete Rose. So it's like, okay, I'm pretty sure it's going to go his way. I'd be shocked if it doesn't. But again, if you were going to set it up like this, why didn't you just do it while the guy's alive? But the other thing is, if I'm going to port this over to hockey, the problem with it doing like this, if you have a number one rule in the sport, and I'm pretty sure hockey has it too, you're not allowed to gamble on games. Guys have gotten in trouble, regardless if you're picking your team to win or not. Just imagine what is being opened up here now in the sport of baseball, which was the thing that almost killed the game. The NHL would never do this. The Hockey Hall of Fame, I don't believe, would ever do this, only because I think it just opens up that gate that you don't want to open.
Yeah, that's why I'm just so baffled by that decision, because who does it help other than the estate of Pete Rose?
Right.
Honestly, who does it help baseball? No. Does it help the integrity of the game? No. Does it give any guidance to current players on how to act? No.
Makes it muddier.
Yeah. And what does it do for fans that, there was something like
Yeah, that's the
special
other
and
thing. Like fans
beautiful
of Pete
about
Rose
this
definitely got
game.
robbed of the experience for sure. I
Yeah.
mean, I'm sure there's still plenty, but yeah, so that's a thing too. Like it does. It gets very complicated, and it just seems like it's just weird timing on it.
Yeah, I agree. I 100% agree. And I certainly hope that hockey never does anything like this. And, there are guys who have made questionable decisions who are still in the game, whether in the periphery
Right.
or like broadcasting and stuff like that, or who have broadcasted in the past who are no longer, they're retired or whatever.
Mhm.
But I don't know. I think it's really complicated, but also it's really simple at the same time. It's like, do you
Right.
want
I think
integrity in your
yeah.
game?
Yeah. And I know there's always this thing, well, look, they're taking gambling money. Yeah, okay, but that doesn't mean there still doesn't need to be rules. Like that's what you have to define.
Yeah, I agree. But hopefully we
Confusing.
don't have to address this in the hockey context when it comes to gambling on games and
Right.
have this question hanging over our heads. That will do it for today's show. Thanks so much for listening. We'll be back tomorrow to talk next steps for the Phantoms. And as a reminder, we always want to hear from you. So if you've got mailbag questions, Flyers thoughts, prospects you want us to cover in our draft profiles, let us know on any of our socials at Locked On Flyers. You can email us at lockedonflyers@gmail or comment on our YouTube channel. I'm Rachel. I'm on Blue Sky and Twitter at rmiriam. That's RMIRIAM.
I'm Russ. I'm at Sportsology on the same socials, SPORTSOLOGY.
Thanks for making Locked On Flyers your first listen today. For your next listen, check out the all new Locked On NHL Game Night. It's every game, every night until that Stanley Cup champion is crowned. Get a local analysis on national scale. Find NHL Game Night on Locked On NHL on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts, and have a great day, everyone.